but thanks for listening. Yeah. Hello, everybody, and welcome to We Say Things, episode 180. Suns fan here with Cinderin. Still in your hotel room. How do you feel, young lad?
I feel pretty good. I'm a little bit tired, I guess, but that's all right. It's self-inflicted, so I can't blame anyone else.
Yeah, that means you were playing World of Warcraft last night into the wee hours.
Not really. I wish, I should have just got that idea that I wrote to you about, hey, let's record before I go to bed. I should have got that idea a little bit earlier before you started playing Centaur, and inevitably you must have lost because you played Centaur.
That was an easy win, I believe.
Oh, okay. Well, inevitably we won because specifically you were playing Centaur.
Yeah, I don't mind doing it earlier, but I need more of a heads up than that. Like even an hour ahead is,
I didn't get the idea. I was like, oh, spontaneously, hey, I'm actually awake at a time when you can record. So.
I'm also not against the idea of testing a different time period in which we normally record. I don't know if people will care one way or the other, but if it was, let's say, around noon, my time, theoretically, which is MST, would that be more convenient for people? It probably doesn't matter because we post it. But by the point, it's like morning EU. I don't know.
We can look into that maybe at some point.
It would be an interesting experiment. What was also an interesting and very fruitful experiment was the In Bruges tier for Patreon. Thank you to our great friends, which Cinderin will say the first half because I've done it 5 weeks in a row. Probably.
Oh, something like that, I guess. Here we go. T-Coil. Did you know? Oh, now we're going to have fun facts at the top as well, huh? T-Coil. Did you know bumblebees can fly higher than Mount Everest? What are they even doing up there?
Interesting.
Yeah. Good question. Burrito Face TI in Auckland. Q-Ludes is ready for the Ice Frog Nerf Hammer. Stupid co-pilot. Did you know khar in Persian means both donkey and huge? Yes,
it's khar.
Okay. Khar.
Thank you.
Was that better?
Yep, that's good.
Okay. D2 Bowie. Yatoro does it again, Sinner, and he's been doing it for a really long time, according to you. Burger King ad for this podcast when? Oscar Magdev Seeker wants to see drastic map changes in this coming patch, maybe a crater. My grandma still doesn't know what Dota is. Disco Farm D. Taste me boo, Stoogie McStooge, Daddy Stood, Notice me Senpai Stooge, Santa's Ballsack Stooge, Schadenfreude Stooge. It's time to change your name once again. The Mega Pope, Auckland is in New Zealand. This is a good suggestion, TI in New Zealand. Zan Xavier and Nate Thicko01 Hamscroats.
Thank you also to Bacon, Shark TM, Freshly Seasoned Goat Balls, Janie, Dop, Nothing to See Here, Underscore Man, Guitar Strings, Eve Remort, Ben, his Patreon names are too long and they're annoying to read out on the podcast, Broomhead, What an Aftertaste, Anonymous, and the Mona Lisa has no eyebrows. It was the fashion in Renaissance Florence to shave them off, Mr. Niebling. I'm going to Google a picture of the Mona Lisa. And let's see here.
Yep, it's true.
There are no eyebrows. I never noticed that, and that might be why she looks so weird. Or it could be that it's Leonardo da Vinci. There's a rumor, there's a theory, whatever you want to call it, that this was a self-portrait as a woman. What do you think, Cinderin?
As a good friend of Leonardo, I can say that there's a good chance that is the case.
That brings up an interesting question that I will add to the last part of our podcast because I'm going to type it now so I don't forget. Famous dead person you would like to meet. The wording's not great, but you get the gist. Okay. So there's been a little bit of a change for our podcast, which most people might not even notice. Well, you probably will if you listen to audio. This is only for audio listeners. There's a platform called Megaphone made by Spotify. They've been talking to us for a long time, and I've been extremely lazy. Cinderin has been a part of the emails. It has been almost a year probably of me just not having the time. Of course, Cinder's not going to do anything, so it's up to me.
Hey, I offered to do it.
Essentially, what this does for me as the person that looks at like the analytics and stuff. So let me kind of boil this down. So the old site we used to use was called Simplecast. Basically, what they do is you upload your audio, you put in the tags and all that stuff, and then you can set it up so that it sends it out using your RSS feed to a bunch of different like audio platforms that use podcast stuff like Spotify, Apple, whatever. The problem is the system is a bit ghetto. It worked, but there's a lot of things that it couldn't do. For example, to look at to listenership, I guess it's called, audio downloads, I would have to go one by one to look at like the total. Like it's an actual process to look at each individual one to see it. So it's hard to see like trends over a long period of time. It's hard to see anything really. So Megaphone allows us to do that. It's like I changed it like 5 days ago as I can already see like the last week of full downloads, which I've never been able to see. I'm like, holy shit, we have a lot more listeners than I thought actually. I had no idea. So that's cool. Another thing, and a big reason why we changed, other than the system is just better overall, is because we can actually monetize it. So for a long time, we just haven't given a shit, other than Patreon, we haven't given a shit about the money involved with the podcast, to the point where, people have asked, if we don't want to support through Patreon, is there any other way to support? And we're like, not really. And like, where's the best place we can watch? Like, where would you get the most money? There's not really a good answer, because YouTube, it's to the point where I don't even send Cinder in the YouTube check every year because there's literally no point.
Actual scammer.
It's nothing, basically. But I used to tell people to watch on YouTube because the downloads, that's something that people like sponsors can visibly see, right? So that is some metric to sell yourself to sponsors or whatever. Now, however, I think it would probably be, for those people that are asking that question, I think audio might be better because we're able to put pre-rolls, post-rolls, mid-roll ads, which I apologize. You guys are going to have to listen to ads now, but it does support us, of course. So right now, I think I've set up like the most basic thing possible where there's one pre-roll, one post-roll. I don't know what other people do. I've just set that up for now and haven't looked into anything else. So for audio listeners, you will be hearing ads, or you should be. Maybe it's not working. I don't know. You can let us know. But yeah, so that's kind of a big change for the podcast. Hopefully everything works right now. Haven't fully tested it. Probably should have done that at some point. But as I said, very lazy. So thank you.
I'm sure you did it right first try.
And the best thing about it is I gave Cinderin admin access, so he can actually do everything I can now.
Oh, that's good to know.
It allows you to add a user, which you are now a user.
Glad you told me that before.
Well, I figured you'd get an email saying that you got it, but you don't check your email probably because you're too lazy as well.
I don't know if I did. This is news to me. I love this podcast.
That's right.
Hey, by the way, I gave you admin access.
So, Senator, if you could look into how to properly do the ads for the podcast, that would really be great for me. Because then I wouldn't have to do it. So.
No, the thing is, though, I do think there's no right way, but I do think having pre and post rolls only is probably what I would want anyway. So.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about it. I think
that's good.
So, in essence, not much has changed. This is theoretically a way that we will be able to monetize the podcast. And yeah, just looking for feedback, I guess. I guess the big thing is make sure wherever you listen to the podcast that it still works. Because if not, I fuck something up. Let us know, and probably YouTube comments is still the best place to reach us.
Yeah, well, because if you messed it up on the audio, they can't reach you there.
That's right.
They wouldn't hear the podcast at all.
I feel like there should be comments for audio somehow. Why is that not a thing? It must be a thing somewhere. Maybe in like 20 years they'll find the technology. Okay.
Audio comments only, no
That's
text. Right. You have to download an audio file that says, wow, this episode sucked.
I want to listen to our viewership, our listeners, all the shit they have to talk. Okay, we have some topics to discuss. The first one, which I put as a headliner, it says Skiter peed in a bottle.
We're digging deep now for content, aren't we?
So Skiter, who of course is from Tundra, if you don't know, won TI this last year. He tweeted, PGL admins forced me to pee in bottle, and then shared a picture of his pee in a bottle, which, by the way, he is very hydrated. I need to drink more water than that, apparently. Or more, not that, that's urine. More water than I'm currently consuming, because it's very transparent, Cinder. I'm actually impressed.
Yeah.
You want to rate the pee real quick?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Are we analyzing this? Is that, I mean, that would be a very us thing to do about this whole thing.
He also, I mean, it says it's a 500 milliliter bottle, and he filled it about halfway, which is pretty good, actually, I would think. I've never peed in a bottle myself, so I couldn't tell you if that is a lot or a little. But it must have been a lot, because he couldn't wait to go till after the game, right? That's the entire drama here. Is he needed to pee really bad during a match, and it was just dragging on, and they paused it, and the admin said, sorry, you can't leave, because that could be constituted as cheating. You must pee in a bottle. I don't know if they said I don't know if they said, please pee in a bottle, or if they just said, sorry, you can't leave the room, and he peed in a bottle. I don't know the specifics with that one. Did you hear anything?
Well, the other thing is, did he pause? Or did he do it live while microing Naga?
No, there was definitely a pause.
That would have been hype.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So just about the whole thing, right? I mean, this is a kind of ridiculous case, right? So the rules are in place so that players don't abuse pausing for potentially cheating or, getting outside information, or you could even use pausing just for icing your opponent effectively, which is one of the dumbest things in the NFL of all time, where when the kicker is about to go and score a field goal or an extra point that would be important or whatever, just when he's about to kick the ball, the opposing team call a timeout to try to tilt him and make him miss, which is just super dumb. So, yeah, so the reason this kind of rule is in place is that. And it needs to be there. It's a good rule that the players, once the game have started, you're playing until the game is over, unless you have a tech issue or a bug in the game, so that you don't abuse pausing to break out gameplay. That's good. Now, unfortunately, he apparently really had to go, and supposedly he also went before the game, but it was a long game, and he drank a lot of water during it, which is, honestly, I'm kind of impressed with how much water he drank during a Dota game and how badly he needed to go. So that in itself is quite the accomplishment. But yeah, I think this whole thing, like, obviously it's kind of, you feel a little bit, I can understand why you would feel unfairly treated, right? If you're a team that doesn't have any sort of ulterior motive or whatever, but you just need to go to the bathroom, but rules are rules, they're there for a reason. And he then went out with a follow-up tweet where he's like, where he follows up and says that he knew that the rulebook stated the bathroom breaks aren't allowed. He goes before the game, but yeah, had a long game, and he's sorry to the fans for sharing the bottle, which I feel like is also a little bit. That's pretty provocative, but it's also kind of funny. So yeah, that's pretty much it. He's not like calling for a rule change. He's not like flaming PGL for upholding their rules. Well, I think he was just pissed in the moment.
He did send a nice one. He did send a follow-up tweet saying, PGL has asked me to clarify my previous tweet. I knew the rulebook stating this is basically what you said. Yeah. Which
it's true.
That part is a little weird that he was forced to tweet something. I feel like.
I don't know if he was forced.
Okay, PGL asked me.
That wording on the tweet would have been hype, though. PGL has forced me to follow up.
So, yeah, I can understand both sides, and obviously, like you said, the rules are there for a reason. I mean, what do you think? Do you think, as a teammate, you'd be traumatized? Because the game is paused. You're sitting... Are they in boot camp? They're together, right?
Yes, I think they are.
Like, what would you do? Captain... You're captaining right there, and what your carry is like, God, I gotta piss so bad. Just gotta get. I think I would
rally my team behind him. I think I would rally my team, and then when there's people around you and you have to pee, you can't do it. So then you would just go back and play.
Oh, I see. I thought you were gonna be a good.
I'd make it like an event. Oh, you want me to hold the bottle as a 5?
Well, yeah, because you're filling their bottle in game, you might as well do it in real life.
Would you like a refill? Oh boy.
So yeah, that was the big news of the week. I don't I don't know what else to say about it. That happened.
That was a good story.
Moving on. Well, actually, okay, real quick though. What if somebody has a condition? Let's just say
I think
okay,
it's a different story if you have like a medical reason, right?
Well, is it though? Like, so you would go to PGL and say, "Hey, I have this condition. I have to pee every 15 minutes. Whatever whatever the fucking thing is." You think they would be okay with that?
It probably does.
I mean, yeah, I'm sure there is something.
I mean, what's the alternative? Did you bring 3 bottles every time you play Dota?
No, you get a bucket, obviously.
Oh, a bucket.
You just have a community team bucket, and you can all share it together. Just quick 30-second pause.
This sounds like the start of some really bad drinking game.
All right, anyway. There was also... you go ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean, if players do have special conditions, have we had something similar with... Wasn't there a time with... wasn't there something with one of the booths at one point in the arena where somebody was struggling with it for a medical reason and they paid like extra attention to it? Yeah, there was something, right?
Twice.
And he was allowed to pause for it, right?
And I think once he left.
Yeah.
I think 2 different instances with G. Pretty sure I'm right. And he was puking
I think you're right.
in both. I don't know if it was a hangover or it was like flu or something or whatever, but yeah.
Definitely felt sick. Yeah.
So there were exceptions made, apparently. I mean, if you're like at TI and you're literally puking on your keyboard, that's not going to look good to the not only your keyboard sponsor, but also Valve, right? For making them stay while they're just, honking up their meal and the fucking...
Yeah, won't somebody think of the keyboard sponsor while you're throwing up on stage?
I mean, I wouldn't be happy as a keyboard sponsor with vomit on it,
Yeah, that depends. If it's really well made so that it just wipes right off, then it's going to look really good.
That's true. If he wins TI on a vomit-ridden keyboard, then the sponsor probably... That's like free advertisement, now that I think about it. As long as it's not broken. If you had to replace it, that insinuates... Obviously, you're going to do it because it's fucking disgusting anyway, but if you replace it, that also implies that it's not working because of the vomit, which means you have a defective product, thus the sponsor will be angry. A lot of levels to this vomit and urine that we're talking about today, so really appreciate that.
I really wish we had our 3rd member of the podcast here today to help us out with that. He would be really useful right now.
Might as well have him, honestly. He's here in spirit. Okay, next topic is the South America coverage drama. So I heard a lot of stuff behind the scenes. So I'm not obviously can't talk about everything, but so South America had some pitches for the English coverage, and they went a route that I don't think a lot of people would have. I think it wasn't General I can't remember the name. Sorry, Jivicus or something.
Yeah.
Which is just literally a solo person, as far as I know. And then he tried to organize everything himself, and apparently it just didn't go well. Production was all messed up. He said he made a lot of mistakes. Kips left as a result. And apparently BTS, South America BTS comes to the rescue and has taken over the coverage for South America. I think it's still only for the English, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. So,
but they might also... BTS also has a Spanish-speaking division, right? So maybe they're also using those casters, unless that is not a thing anymore. It's been a while since I've really been in touch with BTS about Dota. Yeah.
But what do you think of this situation? Because, okay, think of it from like a Valve point of view, right? You're trying to sell the DPC regions, and there's rules in place where you can't do it from your bedroom. To my knowledge, that's still a rule. That could be outdated. I'm not 100% sure. So this insinuates, again, that it should be in like a physical studio or whatever. But if the person you give the DPC region to can't really afford or doesn't want to for whatever reason, like I don't know what the reasons are here, but they can't afford, let's just say, to get a legit studio for all the languages or whatever, like that's not great, obviously, but what can Valve do? Like what rule changes can there be to prevent something like this from happening? Or do you think it's just bad luck in this scenario?
I mean, they could, if you want to enforce this, um, then other options were probably possible in this case, I think, to get a different kind of setup. Or you either enforce it or you have to pay for it, right? Like those are kind of the only two options that I can think of, is that you say, okay, this needs to have this kind of coverage, and if nobody can make coverage on the level that we expect, then there will be no coverage. Or they have to pay for it themselves. But if they're paying for it in one region and not the others, then you're playing favorites, which is something Valve don't like to do. So I think it's kind of tricky because running a production like this is really expensive, and if there isn't enough interest in the regions, or if there isn't enough coverage available, like we're obviously a finite amount of people and there's a finite amount of studios that are interested, and it's probably to no surprise for the Western audience that SA is not the most profitable region to run. It's also not the one that has the most interesting or the most interested Western audience. When I say that, I mean Europe and NA. Obviously, South America has a lot of viewers and has a shitload of fans that are really passionate about it. But strictly from a business perspective of running this and making it profitable, SA is not one of the best regions to have. The best regions to have are probably Europe and China, I would think. Maybe Eastern Europe as well, depending. I don't know enough about the numbers, but
well, I
but
can
yeah,
tell
SA
you,
definitely.
SA and NA are at the bottom.
Yeah.
SCA is okay. I mean, the other four regions are okay at worst.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I don't know why this suggestion or this implementation was greenlit in the first place, if this is how it turned out, but especially because it appears that others probably, like maybe BTS already made a bid for this and just didn't get it because it was too expensive in the beginning, or there were others that made a bid and didn't get it because of pricing and they being unable to afford it or whatever. And now that it has run and has not been satisfactory, then maybe it's also possible that BTS wasn't interested until now, and they kind of came to them and were like, all right, we need you guys to run this if you can. And then they said, sure, we'll do it. Don't know. Don't really know how this worked out, but I believe this will be good for the rest of the season, at least, to help it out.
So that is grand. Okay, so next topic is the continuing status of the DPC. What regions did you want to discuss? I can make my great graphics again. They take me a lot of time.
Honestly, I think we can just really quickly go over them from left to right, and then I have the main gist of it. So I'm assuming we have them in the same order. So it's Western Europe first.
Yeah, can you make a face real quick?
Okay.
Thank you.
There you go.
I appreciate that, Synderen. You're really good at making faces. You should be a face artist.
Yeah, I look like Kermit the Frog. That's awesome. Okay. All right. So Western Europe first. This is one of the regions I've been covering. So
boom, production value.
Pretty much full-on insight into this one. It's hard to keep track of everything, but I have looked at all the regions to get a little bit updated. But yeah, in Western Europe, Liquid are just owning it up. They're playing super well. Their games are very clean. I love their drafts, their strategies, everything. This is a world-class team right now. Probably in a world power ranking right now, I think I'll put them top 3. Just outstanding. If you're doing this well in Western Europe, then...
Behind who?
What's that? I don't... They could be number 1, right? It's always hard with cross-regional play. You don't get to see them play against the best Chinese team.
Yeah, but that's the fun of it, is to make a prediction. If you were to rank them now.
Number 1.
Okay, I would agree. I think on paper they might be the best team overall. I mean, they got top 3 and they replaced Matu with. I mean, they switched positions a bit here, but they replaced Matu with arguably the best player in Dota right now, Nisha. So.
Yeah. And they made a role swap for that reason. So Mickey is now playing carry, and he has been playing so damn well as carry in this team so far. He did play carry for them in the past at one point as well, with Quikva, that iteration. But yeah, they're just outstanding right now. It's just super good Dota. Not much to say about it. And it really goes to show, I mean, obviously all the series haven't been played out, but Liquid are currently 8-0 in games, so 4-0 in series. The second best teams are 3-1 with a 6-4 score in games. So, like Liquid's win rate is 100%. Those teams have 60.
Yeah.
And those teams are Gaming Gladiators and Tundra sharing second place, and then Entity in fourth. Or actually, Entity is technically, I believe, tied in fourth with OG. Into the Breach are sixth, and then Nigma and Secret are 0-3 and 0-4. So Secret losing Nisha and getting Boom has not worked out for them so far whatsoever. They're struggling to find their groove. I feel like when you watch them draft, the identity just isn't quite there for me. And for Nigma, it's inconsistent, where some games they look like they're ready to go and run this major and do a great job. And in other games, it's like, yeah, just inconsistent. Nigma have had 2 really, really good games, but they didn't win the series. So therefore, they're still 0-3. They won 1 game off Tundra, and last night they won 1 game off Game and Gladiators, but they didn't
So I'm
win
looking
either
at
series.
Secret. They have 3 matches left, obviously.
Yeah.
2 of the 3 against Nigma and Into the Breach.
Yeah, and the last one's against Tundra, which, based on how things have gone so far, they're pretty unlikely to win. So
they will be playing Tundra first, though.
Yep.
Then Into the Breach, and then Nigma. So that's going to be a real tight race for the bottom 2.
Out of those 3 teams, the clearly most consistent team has been Into the Breach. In terms of like overall level, in terms of their strategies.
So their 1 victory is against Nigma. They went 2-0 actually against Nigma.
Yeah.
So Nigma are not in great position. They have to basically upset one of the powerhouses, or like even if they beat Secret, that's not enough, barring any weird tiebreak scenario. If Into the Breach, I guess, continues to lose out or something, I don't know. But that's going to be interesting at the bottom for sure.
I mean, if things don't change radically in terms of how these teams are playing, I think Into the Breach are the favorites against Secret. And if they win that, there's probably not going to be any tie. So that will be resolved in 4 days' time on the 23rd. That's on Monday. So that's exciting. I mean, the prospect of Secret being relegated is kind of ridiculous, right? I think it's never happened. Secret have been in Div 1 since divisions were introduced, and they've always finished middle of the pack or top 3. So
now, has Nigma been in Div 2 just as often as Div 1? Not quite.
I've definitely been in Div 1 a lot more. But yeah, they did get relegated before they got promoted again last season, and now they could fall down again, which would be pretty rough for them. It's been a hard year for them, I'm sure. And they would love to find some success again. And if not get to the major, then at least stay alive so they don't have to go through the whole grind again. It's quite the grind getting to Div 1. So yeah, that's EU. That's the status right now. Nobody is technically qualified for the major, but barring some ridiculous outcome, Liquid should be there for sure. So they're the one team that should be fairly safe. Then in Eastern Europe, to nobody's surprise, really, BetBoom seem to be doing really, really well. BetBoom is obviously the super team, you could say, that was built with Pure, GPK, Nightfall, Save, and Toronto, Tokyo. They're the team to beat in this region right now. They did lose a single game 2 days ago to Darksiders. And then they proceeded to absolutely annihilate them in the second game. And then the third game was pretty close. But yeah, in the end, BetBoom still got through there. And this region has 3 slots. Team Spirit are 2-0. They're not at the top of the board because they haven't played enough games yet. But this region is very unpredictable. We have BetBoom in first, then we have a 4-way tie for second currently, with Darksiders, Hellraisers, Team Spirit, and Virtus Pro. So a lot of things can still happen here. Don't have the same amount of insight into this region because I wasn't covering it, but
it's okay,
yeah, I think probably BetBoom and Spirit will do well there, realistically speaking. And China, which I've covered, we talked about last week about some allegations there about Knights. They were accused of cheating. There is no update on this account. So I'm sure there's an investigation going on, but there's been nothing conclusive because they continue playing this series. And I don't think there's been any sort of follow-up additional evidence or additional accusations based on the following series that they had. All of this started after the win against LGD. That's the following day. Some stuff got posted about it. But so far Knights are continuing to play their games as usual. And they look really good. So in China, we have a lock. Astra are guaranteed to the major with a 5-0 scoreline currently. They look like another top 3 team in the world. Super good. They have a scoreline of 10-2 in games. They dropped 1 game to Knights, and they dropped 1 game to Extreme Gaming. So 2 of the other front runners in this region. Knights might get second place over LGD, who they beat. And then probably the third, fourth will be LGD and Extreme Gaming. Like the current top 4 is likely to be the final one, with Astra, Knights, LGD, and Extreme. And then in this division, there's just at this point, pretty clear, unless something surprising happens, bottom 2 will be Dawn, who is 0-10 in games, and Astra Aries, who are 3-10. So they're 0-5 in series as well.
Yep.
So this is a pretty polarizing region.
Southeast Asia.
Yeah. Speaking of polarizing, this region is really surprising to me when I look at the results. Would you look at that?
God,
Boom and Fnatic are 0-4. So this is kind of like, I mean, I wouldn't say it's exactly like Western Europe, where it's like Secret and Enigma are at the bottom.
What did we predict again?
I don't remember. I think we both had Blacklist International pretty high. They're 3-0 right now, but
Man.
I think we probably had either Boom or Fnatic up high as well, and that is just not the case.
I might have had both. Yeah,
that could be. So some of the newer names here, Blacklist International and Bleed, are doing really well. Obviously, it's very experienced players, but the roster or the teams or the orgs are new. But for me, the biggest surprise here, aside from the poor performance of Boom and Fnatic, is Execration are currently tied for first, together with Geek Slate, Bleed, and Blacklist International. All of them have 3 wins, and Bleed and Execration have 1 loss. So this region is wide open for the 3 slots, but Boom and Fnatic, as it looks, should be happy to not get relegated, which feels a bit ridiculous to say. A lot of people thought this Boom team was going to be really good after getting Zephyr and Xnova, but has not been looking good this time. All right, fastest region to go over, NA. To nobody's surprise, Shopify Rebellion and TSM are at the top of the boards. This region is generally going to be about 2 or 3 teams, and the third team that you would expect to have a chance of going to the major is Nouns, who lost 1-2 to TSM, so that game has been played, and Nouns will be kicking themselves because they were really far ahead in game 2 and they crushed game 1, but TSM managed to make a comeback in that second game and then close it out. So at the end of the day, if things play out as expected, it will be Shopify Rebellion at TSM at the major. Yeah. Nouns will effectively more or less need to beat Shopify Rebellion, or one of those 2 teams have to lose to teams that they're massive favorite against. So probably not going to happen. Nouns needs to beat Shopify, and they have been looking like the most dominant team in the region. Their games are absolute shit stomps, to be honest. Like just completely rolling their opponents. They haven't faced, like we said, TSM or Nouns yet, but the way they dismantled a team like Wildcard and making it look stupidly easy is concerning for other teams. Those games were 16 and 26 minutes. So, well,
also concerning for our friend Dendy, who is at the bottom right now with Bait.
That is true.
They've only played 2 matches, but they are against the quote-unquote easier opponents than you're going to be facing. They've played 5-Rat and Wildcard and lost both 1-2. That means they haven't played Shopify, they haven't played Nouns, they haven't played TSM. So that is looking like rough stuff. But
yeah, that's fair. We did mention Bait as a wild card for this division.
That one is going to be down to when they play Alpha and Thayuth.
Yeah, I would say
those are must wins, I think.
They are favorites against both teams, based on what I've seen so far. So I think there's a good chance Bait stay in Div 1. But yeah, the whole dream of making the major, after their 2 losses, I think that's almost gone. Like, you can't afford that in NA to lose to these teams if you want to get top 2. So, yeah, unfortunately, they couldn't convert those 2 1-1s to wins. They lost both third games, and as it stands now, they need to win against probably both Shopify and TSM to make it, and I just don't think that's going to happen. So we said they were a dark horse to get top 2 here. Definitely not going to happen at this point. But they could still get like a decent 3rd, 4th finish if they start winning out most of their games, except the toughest opponents. And finally, SA, wide open as well. 2 slots here. Beast Coast and Keyed Stars are in the top right now, but that's because EG hasn't played as many games. EG are 2-0, 4-0 in games. That is obviously the superstar roster of SA with the one with Pakaz and Whisper. Yeah, more to come on that later when they've played more games. As it stands right now, those three teams are probably realistically the top three, maybe Thunder Awaken as a dark horse for that as well. But I would expect at the end of the day that this is going to be EGB's coast, as is tradition. It's kind of what we expected preseason, and so far both teams are lossless, so that is likely to come true. That's
And
the
they are
weekly
slated,
update.
they're slated to play last as well.
Yes, that's correct. That's the absolute last game of the division, which might end up being irrelevant at that point,
Yeah.
which is a bit of a shame, but
True.
we'll see.
Weekly update brought to you by Cinderen's Face.
Oh, that is a sponsor and a half.
Okay, this is our final normal topic. There was a misleading tweet, which I didn't know was misleading until Cinderen told me, by Secret, who I assume deleted this. I don't know if we know that for sure.
I don't know if they deleted it.
They basically came out with the total sales of the Battle Pass based on, correct me if I'm wrong here, the total levels. They equated all the levels total of everybody that used the Battle Pass and assumed that everybody bought each level, which obviously is not the case. Like, a lot of people got it for free even, right? The Battle Pass.
Yep.
So these numbers mean nothing, which means this topic is completely irrelevant, Cinderen.
It's not, because obviously when there's like misinformation like this, I think it's still good to like look at what is being communicated and what might be the truth based on it. So the wording here is the Battle Pass is finally over. In total, it grossed more than $293 million, out of which only $18.9 million went to TI 11. The highest Battle Pass we could fund was level 120,300, which is true. This part is true, which means they spent around 50K this year, which is probably also true. So yeah, there's 2 Chinese Battle Passes that are level 120K, which is bizarre to me, but you know, people can do with their money what they want. I feel like there's massive diminishing returns at some point on this. But if you're having fun with it and you're a billionaire, then who's to stop you? So so the problem with this is, and this is, they got this information from Strats, which is a homepage that tracks different stuff, including the Battle Pass. And Strats has an info box on their Battle Pass tracker saying, all total spent values assume that all levels were purchased, which is not the case for most players during TI 2022. So, the thing about this is, let's say you operate with the math here that every level 1 Battle Pass cost whatever that cost. And if people start in level 100, then they bought a Battle Pass with 100 levels. That's one thing. But these numbers, that means they don't account for all the free Battle Passes that were handed out as the goodie bag, right? It doesn't account for all the discounted levels bought with the bundles, and it doesn't account for all the free levels people acquired just by playing the game. So it means, like, this is massively skewed. And obviously the picture that is being painted by the tweet is that Valve are very greedy and selfish, or whatever angle you want to take on it. At least that's one interpretation, is that, holy shit, if we had the regular system, this would have been the biggest TI of all time. If I were to guess, just a random guess, I think the Battle Pass probably made less than half of this. That would be my guess, because there's a shitload of players that reach a decent level but play for free, or buy the bundles on a discount, which is obviously massively like different in terms of levels. And there's the Candy Works levels that are also quote unquote free, you know. So like, let's just make the fair assumption that this is way too high. And then obviously you got to keep in mind that the Battle Pass, only the first half of it went to TI, and then the second half was after, which we've already talked to death on this podcast and we disagree with, and think if they do want to do it that way, it should support the DPC with the second half, or have it as usual. So yeah. But yeah, overall this number is definitely misleading, and I think it's worth talking about. Also because if we had the right number, and let's assume it's 150, what does the community think then? Like, let's say it made the same amount of money as the last Battle Pass, but half of it was after and half was before. So there hasn't seemed to be a lot of complaints, as far as I could tell, from the community's perspective.
You know, God, how do I say this without offending everybody? You know, people are sheep. You know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, like, I'm certainly I'm a sheep to something. It's not to this, but to something else probably. But
Suns.
yeah, definitely a sheep to the Suns. But you don't really. Sometimes you forget these things over time. I can just speak for myself, who's now old. You take things for granted. You assume the best in people until you get old, and then you assume the worst, and you're usually right. I cannot believe. I'm not going to go on a rant here, even though I kind of want to. Like we've talked about it, like you just said about the Battle Pass not, being the greatest setup this time around, and it was a choice. And instead of people complaining, there's literally one of the biggest threads of the week on Reddit, 1,800 upvotes. Thank you, Valve, for giving me a free Battle Pass. What the fuck? How is that possible? My God. Lord help us. Lord help us.
I mean, think of it this way. All the people that wouldn't usually buy a battle pass are obviously going to be happy that they got one for free, right? Because from their perspective, they're getting a product that they didn't usually have access to or didn't want to get. So for all those players, the free Arcanas and the free battle pass is obviously great. But for all the people that are maybe usually maybe a little bit more invested into the way the TI is run or organized or whatever, or at the end of the day, for everybody who interacted with this battle passes in some capacity, they got more than usual for free. So you could say that. How was it? How did you word this sometime on a different podcast episode or something about how obviously you give people free shit to kind of, how to say it, put a band-aid on the situation or whatever, if you thought things weren't great. Yeah. I mean, obviously it clearly does, and maybe you can be like, oh, it's more positive than you would have expected overall. The thing is, for me, I think the majority of fans, I'll just be honest, I think the majority of the fans actually don't care about the size of the prize pool. I think they don't. And I also think the majority of fans don't really care that much about the ecosystem in Dota as long as they get to watch pro games. For most fans, it's not important.
First half is correct.
Yeah, so
people just don't care about the pro scene, just casual people.
Yeah, so the point I'm going to make is that we can talk, because we're obviously very much involved in the pro scene and the ecosystem and the health of it, and whether it's profitable and reliable for players to make a career out of this, at least for a time. And it obviously influences our careers too, how things are run. I can say from my perspective as talent, it hasn't really, this has had no repercussions at all that TI was smaller this year. The rest of the year seems to be running, but obviously we would like for there to be more
though.
Yeah, and we would like there to be more grandeur around the rest of the year. If TI gets smaller, we would like the rest of the year to get bigger in compensation, so that the overall scene has a little bit more oomph to it than it does currently.
I mean, I can understand us having different perspectives because we work in the esports. I just figured that Reddit would be I'm not saying that there's no casual people on Reddit, but I figured most people would be into the esport aspect of Dota. So I feel like that is common sense, that the way that this system is set up now, and this last, this one felt like, oh, we just changed it. I truly feel like this was almost an experiment that has now been successful. So the precedent has been set. I will be beyond fucking shocked if they go back to the old system now, which means we're just stuck with this new system where the prize pool isn't as big, which is great, but the rest is just pocketed instead of making the rest of the scene better.
Yeah,
so
you and I would be celebrating beyond belief if this was the TI prize pool and the rest of the battle pass had gone into this year. That was the dream. That was exactly what we wanted.
Yeah.
And we got the first half, which makes it worse than nothing because now TI was just smaller and there was no benefit for the rest of the year, which is what we were really, really hoping for. Imagine a season with a 20 million TI and then the majors are 4 mil each or something. That would be so great. Or the DPC was worth more, so the teams were more sustainable, just staying in Division 1 and playing it and putting on these games every week for the fans, right? That would have been great for me. But at the end of the day, you also have to acknowledge and look at it and it is a business. Is it good business to do it that way? maybe not. Like maybe it just wouldn't have been profitable or it wouldn't have been reasonable. And obviously, at the end of the day, that's kind of how things are run, right? So,
well, that's the thing though. Like, I'm not even disappointed in Valve because they're a company, so I expect them to try to cut corners and make it as profitable as possible for them specifically to see how much they can get away with. That's literally just how you're supposed to run a business. I'm disappointed in the community for being okay with it, and that's just how it's going to be, I guess. So that sucks ass. And the funny thing is, like, that money, whatever that money, all this money we're talking about being distributed, we probably wouldn't have seen any of it anyway. Like in this scenario,
it wasn't.
Right?
It wasn't really
literally,
for our benefit.
It's literally just for the players and the tournaments, which I don't know how that would even trickle down to us. Maybe it would a little bit, but probably not.
The perspective for me was not that, oh, if they do it that way, I personally will make more money. It is, I think the season for everybody will be more enjoyable and the events can be bigger and better because we have a way more money to run them with. Like, there is a reason that when I think about majors that are memorable and were really cool, most of my memories are from the 3 million majors that we had in the beginning. And it's not just because the prize pool was bigger, it's because the magnitude of the event for the importance of the year and the way the production was and the way the audience was and the way everything was set up and led into it and the stories and everything just felt more important and bigger. And there is a direct connection between prize pool and that, because when you do have a $3 million prize pool, you're also going to put more money into the production of that tournament. It's just natural. It's just bigger. And I think a lot of fans, again, it's probably a minority once again out of all fans, but a lot of fans I think would really enjoy to have majors like that again because it felt so special, these tournaments.
Yeah,
and that's the biggest shame. I think is that we don't seem to have these like magnitudes of events anymore. Effectively, if you compare Dota 2's pro scene now to quote unquote the golden age in like 2016 or whatever, TI's prize pool is smaller. Or I guess TI's prize pool is now comparable to what it was back then in reality. And the majors are smaller. So all the Valve involved tournaments are just, in terms of overall prize pool and magnitude, are smaller. And then the third party tournaments aren't really stepping up because they can't afford it. Like there's this like, we had this tournament in Riyadh last year or whatever it was, which was pretty big, like prize pool wise. But aside from that, there hasn't been like oh
go ahead.
Has there been a third party tournament that had like a $3 million prize pool that's like stepping up to the plate and running?
But now
that kind of magnitude.
Now that betting sponsors are allowed, NFT, like all this bullshit is allowed. Is there anything that's not allowed actually? Is alcohol allowed? I don't know. Betting was like when I was running the captain's draft minor, I believe, I don't remember all the specifics, but who reads these contracts, honestly? Betting seemed to be like the highest priority of that's not okay. I don't remember what else there was, but the problem is that's all that's left now. Because everybody else, all the non-endemics that were a part of Dota occasionally are just not there anymore. So now you now you have to do the sponsors you don't want to go to because there's nothing else. So, and you've kind of driven away a lot of the third-party tournaments that wanted to run tournaments to begin with. A lot of them community grown, aka Moonduck. But
BTS also isn't really doing much anymore.
Yeah. So that's
yeah. So once
not
again,
great.
I'm holding out on hope that either in the coming year or years that there's going to be bigger and more interesting third-party tournaments, or I hope that Valve will want to try to bring back the old majors and that there is a way of making them profitable so that it also feels worth it to them. I'm not asking Valve to just throw money into the wind just for the sake of it, but hopefully finding a way that they can incorporate this either by changing the way the Battlepass works, so that maybe like we have now with the two parts where there's a part that goes into TI and a part that doesn't. What if instead of that there were two battle passes and one of them was the TI battle pass and the other one was the year pass, and then that year pass would contribute to the prize pool of the majors and the overall health of the scene, but then that battle pass in return was more profitable for them because they did some other thing that they realized they could do. People's spending habits by splitting it into 2 in the year, once in the winter, once in the summer, whatever it is, when people have money that they want to spend on this. But the thing is, if I know Valve right, they've probably done all the analysis and recognized that this isn't worth it. But I hope they're wrong, and I hope they find that out, that there is a way of improving it, so that we can have that. Because I really do miss it. I don't know if you were much involved with those majors. I don't remember if DC played in any of them when you had the team.
Manila.
You were in Manila. That was such a fucking banger event. What an awesome event. Manila major, the Frankfurt major, the Kiev major. These majors were super good. And yeah, it's been a while since we've had something like that aside from TI. So
maybe it's because I'm going to these tournaments now as a caster. You think that ruins it? Perhaps
No.
the prestige just goes down the two.
I mean, I guess at some point we also get a little bit jaded, right? I think that's inevitable, that when you do this job for X years and you go to these events, obviously you've seen it, you've been there.
Jaded.
But still, was that the wrong word?
No, it's just you don't seem like that type of a person.
I think, how to say, like the sparkling eyes that you had the first time you went to TI or went to the major aren't the same after the 10th time, right?
Right.
So there inevitably there will be some diminishing returns, but that also doesn't mean that all of this is rose-tinted glasses and it was so cool because the majors were new and fresh. I think the reason we have those memories is not just that it was new, is my point. I think they were also a different beast to begin with. So, yeah.
Okay, so with that, we're going to segue. This was not by design, okay? I know that this is going to seem like I put it here on purpose. This has been here for God knows how long, maybe 6 months.
Many, many weeks, yes.
And it's because our episode is not long today, so we have time. The only Patreon mailbag question left from Guitar Strings asks, what will be the downfall of Dota 2?
Okay, so
yeah.
I think there's a pretty simple answer to this, and I think it has nothing to do with the pro scene, to be honest.
Okay.
Or okay, maybe that's a bit of an extreme, but I think it's the pro scene is not the most important thing for this. Like as much as we love Pro Dota and we make a living off it and we really care about it, the vast majority of players are casual players and just want to have some fun and kill some heroes. The downfall of the game will be if it doesn't get updated anymore and doesn't get support, which is what happens to other games when they become quote unquote dead games, is that the developer announce that they won't work on them anymore. And then the player base ultimately get bored with the game because it's too similar, and they move on to play something else that's fresh, that's more interesting. Gamers have pretty short attention spans in general, and the thing that has maintained such a strong player base in Dota forever is the running updates, from my perspective, and the love for making this game something special over and over and over again for like 20 years now. If that spark goes away, and we enter the territory of, say, something like Team Fortress 2 or something like Heroes of the Storm, where Blizzard just go out and announce this is the last patch we'll ever make, we're stopping support for this game, that kind of thing, then ultimately that would be the downfall. Let's say Pro Dota died at the snap of a finger, but they kept patching the game and kept putting in a battle pass that didn't contribute to any prize pool, but was just for the fans of the game to get something to play, like in what's it called, a Fortnite or whatever. Dota would still thrive as a game,
of course.
But yeah, the downfall will be stop from the devs.
Let's make the question a little bit more interesting, because I agree. I think that's the obvious answer. Basically, what is the downfall of Dota? It would be Valve not updating the game. Mm-hmm. At what point do you think that happens? It's inevitable that it happens at some point, right? Surely. Mm-hmm. We're not going to be here 40 years from now and they're updating Dota 2.
I think, to be honest, this could happen when Valve makes their next hit. I think until they do that, they will maintain this game.
Okay, let's say they come out with Neon Prime tomorrow. It's a big hit, whatever.
Yeah.
Then what happens to Dota? It's a slow death?
So if Neon Prime gets huge, first of all, it's a matter of if there's any overlap between player bases, right? Let's say Neon Prime comes out and a huge part of the Dota fan base love this game and play it a lot, and they can obviously see that on the metrics, right? If the player base is very interested in this game and it becomes a smash hit and it has big tournaments and like an esports scene that fans, gather around and the casual play is really good and fun and there's a lot of depth to it, then I could see Valve just reassigning their resources from the people that work on Dota 2 to look more in that direction. I'm trying to remember when they stopped really developing much in Team Fortress 2, if there was an overlap with another game becoming successful, if that was around the time that CSGO came out or around the time that Dota 2 came out. I've never played TF2, so I'm just ignorant in this. I'm just wondering if there's a connection at all that, okay, we have this other game now that is a smash hit
that's
that
fair,
we want to work
because,
with.
when there's a big hit, basically what happens at Valve is people can work on whatever games they want.
Yes.
And there's less people wanting to work on Dota. I think I can say that without a shadow of a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. When there's a big hit that everybody wants to work on, even like when they were doing Artifact and Underlords, a lot of people from the Dota team went to those games temporarily. But I don't like IceFrog was still fully involved with Dota at the time, so it didn't seem like that was much of a change, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
So they come out with Neon Prime. It's a big hit, even if it doesn't take away some of the player base. It's still gonna, because there's not regular updates theoretically. I feel like it's going to be really slow. It's not like going to be, hey, it's not going to be out of the blue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
no,
even with Heroes of the Storm, like that wasn't, I wouldn't say that was out of the blue. Maybe some of the players thought so, but game was never that popular, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a huge shock or anything. Dota's still popular, so.
I mean, I think an actual good comparison here is Dota and Dota 2, right? Dota had a really thriving player base and had tournaments and had a lot of stuff going on. Dota 2 comes out, the player base starts trying out this game and they start transitioning to it. And as a result, Dota 1 is now a way, way, way less played game. Obviously, it still has like niche communities and countries where they still play Dota 1, especially in like LAN cafe environments or whatever. But for the most part, this game replaced it, right? It is also a copy in a sense, right? So obviously, it's more natural for this to just overtake it. But that kind of development that happened to Dota could happen to Dota 2 if quote unquote Dota 3 comes out, which just isn't Dota anymore, but garners the interest of the player base, garners the interest of the devs. And I mean, I wouldn't blame the devs for it. Dota 2 has been a game that's been out for, what is it now? Over 10 years now. We're up to 12. And obviously there was the development time of even getting it launched. So probably they've developed Dota for well over 15 years now.
That's
probably a lot of the devs that worked on it in the start don't work on it anymore. Most of them will have either moved to different projects at Valve, or they work for a different company, or they retired. Like, 15 years is a long time, especially in that industry. So who knows? But yeah, at some point when you're in that work environment and you have that flexibility, you would look for new challenges, look for something else that is interesting, rather than maintaining the same game for years and years and years.
I'm going to give Valve a little bit of credit, even though I don't like the implementation of the second half of the Battle Pass. Mm-hmm. I also think that is going to be, if they're going to continue on with this, it's going to be more manageable for even smaller teams, which they're expecting, because people are leaving. Obviously, COVID was a big hit for everybody, like game industry. So I think part of the reason that they're doing that is to just make it more manageable going forward, because they're just not going to have as many people wanting to work on Dota. So we're going to have less updates, I would assume, generally. I mean, it's been 2 years, more than 2 years now, on the same map. That's probably what's going to be
the rumor that IceFrog is more involved with Dota again, which, if is true, could also have some implications on what is happening with the other stuff that he was rumored to be working on. Is that just
they abandoned it?
Kind of did they abandon it? Is the part that he was playing in that more or less complete for the time being? So he
probably wanted to rename Neon Prime Artifact 3, and they said, "Okay, go back to Dota, bro."
That was it.
And we haven't really talked about that. If that is true, that IceFrog hasn't been working on Dota recently.
Yeah.
Do you think that would have been a big uproar if people knew about it? Like, it felt like it kind of, this rumor leaked out, and then it feels like more than a rumor now, but nobody seems to really be that bothered by it. I thought there'd be more of a reaction.
I'll say it this way. I feel like if IceFrog is working on Dota again, you will be able to tell in the next patch. Because I think his way of developing this game and of patching things is unique to all of gaming. there's a reason he's held in so high regard, is that his track record of how he patches this game is unmatched for me. That's why I was excited to hear he's working on another game, because I think in terms of like game balance and creativity, he is the number one in video games. So I hope, I mean, okay, first of all, I hope he's working more on Dota again. If he wasn't, which was the speculation that I had for a long time myself as well. If he is, that's good news. But I also hope that whatever else he was doing wasn't just shelved and all of the work he put in was for naught. Because that would also be a huge shame. Because I wanted to try this new game. I was like, if Ice Frog was working on another game, man, I want to see what this is, you know?
True that.
So I guess the silver lining is if that game was shelved, then he's back on Dota, and I would be happy with that. But let me try the other game too, right? So I guess yeah, that's. I mean, isn't that just the downfall of every game, though?
Yep.
That the player base dwindles because of lack of updates, or because the genre just is finite. I think auto battlers are a pretty good example for that in the grand scheme of things.
How dare you?
I mean, you have there, like I said, there's niche communities for everything, right? So obviously, you can have an auto battler that has a community, but it's not going to be as big as when auto chess came out. That just isn't happening again. Like you can make the most insane auto battler now, but you're not getting millions of players. I just don't think that genre has the longevity for that for most players.
Agreed.
But for niche communities, absolutely. You're one of the people that might be playing auto battlers for 10 years because you love it, and that's great. But it's not, everybody isn't going to play them for that much. So
all right, so from dead game to our final topic, dead people you'd like to meet, Cinder.
Oh, Jesus.
The reason we brought this up is from the beginning of the episode where Leonardo da Vinci was brought up, and that would definitely be, I feel like, the number one choice.
You think so?
Sounds fucking awesome. I mean, literal genius, like coming out with inventions that weren't made for like hundreds of years in some cases. Like, it's one of the smartest people to ever exist. That would be, I mean, a part of me would be fascinated, but the other part of it, I'm probably still too stupid to understand. Like,
yeah,
be able
How
to.
about fucking Genghis Khan instead?
Well, he did a lot of fucking, so that is a good term to use for him, I suppose.
Wow.
Would Genghis Khan? No, not super interested. I feel like a lot of the people that I'd think about wanting to meet are probably so fucking racist.
Just I mean, it was a different time.
Yeah, exactly.
So, not that that's an excuse, but the world was so different that if you meet anyone from 200 years ago, the disconnect would be insane. Like, you would have no... Think of how little shared life experience you have with a person that died 200 years ago.
I'd love to... God, I hope people don't get mad about this. I don't care. I'd love to meet Jesus, because from what I'm hearing in America these days is he would be a real fan of guns. So interested what his opinion on that would be.
Yeah, that's good.
First thing I think of with Jesus is guns, you know? Perfect connection. All right, real answer though, for a somewhat recent death in the last 20 years or whatever. Robin Williams, I would have loved to have met. That guy was fucking awesome. Yeah. And the weird thing about Robin Williams is I actually did not find him funny at all. Like his comedic sketches, I actually did not like at all. But his acting, it just felt so true to me, you know? And he was a very depressed person, had obviously issues, but super nice fucking guy. And it's a real shame what happened to him. So that one, when that came out, I was super sad. Because he seemed like somebody that was just a real G, if you know what I mean. Anybody come to mind for you, Cinderman?
I'm not really good at these things. I saw someone in chat writing Isaac Newton, which I think would also probably be very interesting. It's just like everybody that's coming to mind for me has something to do with science, and I just don't know if that like... Because Isaac I just Newton? Feel like...
Sure.
Yeah, so people that come up with these... like that have these scientific revelations, I think they must be really interesting to have a conversation with, right? Because like, in order to get those ideas, the way you see the world and the way you think in general has to be inspirational, one way or the other. I mean, it's also possible that meeting those people, the conversations would be really weird because, again, you would have no common ground, or the way they think of things is just so abstract that you wouldn't really
What about
get
Mozart?
anything out of
Mozart
it.
would be cool, right?
Mozart would be cool. The first guy that came to mind when you said it for me was Albert Einstein.
Okay.
But I don't know. It's kind of a boring answer, I guess.
It's not. Why is that boring?
I don't know.
Just
Isn't
because
that
you
just
said
like-
it?
Yeah, that makes things pretty boring. When I say things, they immediately get boring.
Yeah.
I can say the most hype thing, and people will be like, "Okay, dude."
Good. Glad to
Okay,
hear.
I'm just. I found a post or I found a homepage here. Top 10 famous dead people you'd most want to meet. Here they are. Elvis Presley, George Washington, Marilyn Monroe, Mahatma Gandhi, Michael Jackson, Abraham Lincoln, Walt Disney,
That's more than
Bruce
5.
Lee,
What the fuck?
Mel Blanc, and Franklin D. Roosevelt. Did
Okay.
I say 5? I said top 10.
This is a very American list, other than
Yes,
Mahatma Gandhi.
The first thing I thought was like, wow, this is really.
I don't think I want to meet any of those people. Mahatma Gandhi would be cool, I guess, but other than that,
Gandhi would probably be pretty cool.
who gives a shit about George Washington? That's not. I feel like that's not interesting.
I think about Bruce Lee.
Oh, he was on that list.
Yeah.
Well, people were very fascinated by him. Went before his time. You know, his son died in a movie. Did you know that?
I did not.
His son was in a
That's
movie.
pretty tragic.
And the gun that they used was real, and he died. Pretty fucked up.
Wait, was this somewhat recent?
No. This was like
because I remember that
80s, 90s.
Okay, I remember
80s,
a story of
must
this from last year. I think that happened again with a prop gun.
Yeah, that was Alec Baldwin killed somebody by accident.
That's correct. Yeah. Oh my god, man! Imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, the movie somebody's saying was called The Crow. I feel like it was 80s. Somewhere in that ballpark, but yeah. Pretty bad.
All right, so what was your choice at the end?
What did I say? I said Mozart. I said
Leonardo da Vinci.
Da Vinci. Oh, Da Vinci's the coolest.
Da Vinci's a good pick.
He's the coolest.
I think.
I can't think of a more fascinating person in history than Da Vinci.
It's definitely very fascinating.
I'm interested what you guys in the comments of YouTube, if you want to post, not that we're going to talk about it again. I'm actually just interested in what people would put.
What they would pick.
There's got to be some good ones that we're not thinking of.
I'm trying to think back further. If there's somebody from like the Viking Age or the Middle Ages, that would be cool to meet. Joan of Arc.
Oh yeah, Joan of Arc, sure.
I would probably be. I think somebody like Joan of Arc would also be really cool if you think about like at least the version of that society that we know about, the information that we have about how it was back then. I think she would have been a really cool character.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be my pick, actually.
What about a Zeus? Huh? You don't want to meet a Greek god, Sundar?
Oh, yeah. I remember.
All right. Yeah. Well.
All right. My pick's Joan of Arc.
Joan of Arc. Okay. Sounds good. All right. That'll do it for this week. Next week will be another episode. Believe it or not, that's how this works. You're going to be in the hotel room by then as well, or are you going to be gone?
I'm going home on the 25th in the evening, so that will be next Wednesday. So I will be home on the 26th.
Okay. In
a week. I do think we can record regular time, I would imagine. But I'll let you know.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Have a good week, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Goodbye. We say things that don't mean anything. But thanks for listening. Yeah.